Hey, welcome to another episode of Creating Cultures That Outperform with Terry and Frank. I'm Frank Warner, the founder of People Productive. We help people and the companies they work for to thrive together. What could be more important than that in this digital era? Tara?
Yes, hello, and my name is Terry Mays. I'm a certified culture engineer that helps companies focus on the human side of business to bring increased value to their organization. Welcome.
Welcome. So, if you've already tuned in to prior episodes on this show, you see we've been covering human factors. It's a science behind why different tactics and tools and whatnot all work. And it is all about what is the human side of business and leadership. So this is in particular, leaders can benefit greatly from this. They must know and learn to understand the equipment they've been given. I don't like referring to humans as equipment, but I think it's the best analogy. If you have a better one, please comment. I'd love to get a better way to say that. But this is, this is an era where companies are defined by how profoundly they are able to use the talent in their company to create, innovate, outcompete. It's all about that. That means you have to unlock human potential. You unlock human potential by understanding the needs, the psychology, the neuroscience behind people creating greatness. So we have a really good episode today. And Tara, anything you want to say anything before we flip to the video?
Yes, I think the way you describe it with equipment, we are the human resources. So
Mhm.
every company has this human resource department that is supposed to be focused on the people. And I think what we're showing here is how important it is to bring that focus on the people. So sometimes you find that human resources people are not very human resource focused. They tend to be more focused towards the company brand. And
Mhm.
so this is a lot of what we're sharing here is to give a nice balance to that. So there has to be a little bit of both, but learning how to focus on the human side of business really does make the business function much better, much more productive, much more profitable. So what we're sharing is really important.
Yep, the human side of business matters in this new era of work where it's work from anywhere, lead from anywhere. It's a new world, a new time. People have to build really human competencies to flourish. And let's look at a very interesting video today. We're going to talk about why this matters if you want to build successful change movement in your company. So, hey Marcel, if you key it up, perfect. Thank you. Okay, we're going to get right into this. Okay, so here is a guy steps out. It's a big picnic. He starts dancing.
He's the Lone Ranger right now, just
Yep,
getting a groove on.
the Lone Ranger leading by example. Not a great example, actually. And now number two comes in. I think this is really interesting. Hey Marcelo, why don't we pause it there? Okay. So what we have here is somebody trying to drive change. You have a picnic going on, everybody's hanging out, there's not a lot of fun and activity going on. One guy sets the stage. He jumps up and he starts doing this crazy dance. And he does it alone for a while. It's painful to sit out there being the lone wolf, like Terry says. Finally, somebody else joins in. This is a very important moment, actually, as we'll see as we roll further along in this. You know, Tara?
Yes, absolutely. So the guy is there initially, he's dancing, he's having a good time. He doesn't really care who's watching. And I think this is so important and very relevant to leading change movements because you have to be willing to step out and be silly by yourself. You have to be willing to just go out and do what you know needs to be done, even
Hmm.
if you have to do it alone. But what's nice is this guy is dancing and he's, got his own way of dancing. We don't know exactly what he's doing, but this second guy comes along and he's like, I'll join in on the fun. I want to be a part of this. And so what you see is now this guy that was alone now has someone that's following him.
Hmm.
And
So
they're
let's
both
watch. So
just
let's
going
watch
for
the rest. Sorry, I'm cutting you off, Tara.
it. Yeah,
Apologize.
yeah,
I thought you were finished. Okay, so let's see what happens now. Worst handstand ever. Aha.
Now there's a third.
Yep. Here's somebody else brave enough to get out there.
Now here comes the crowd. Now it's a party.
Yep. Now the change took effect. We've got everybody joining in. And we're going to see what the psychology is behind this and what it means for the workplace. How could you leverage this? Because human change movements work like this. You usually have a lone wolf, you get some other followers coming in, they're important, and then you start to get the movement working. And companies are always trying to undertake change in the workplace. And that really matters, you know?
Yeah, it does. And it's so indicative of how change happens in the workplace.
It
You
is.
know, you have people that are just sitting back and they're watching, they're waiting to see how this thing is going to go. They don't really know if they agree or if they want to jump in. They're just kind of waiting to see. And then you start to see people slowly and surely get on board with the change. So you've
Yeah.
got those early adopters. So that guy, the first guy that comes along, and then the second guy that comes along, you know, they're like the early adopters that really believe in what's happening. They want to be a part of it. So they join in right away. But then you
Mhm.
always have those that are kind of like your silent detractors. They're just sitting back and they're
They're out
watching,
there.
they're waiting, and you don't know when they're going to jump in or if they ever will. So it's important to know who those guys are as well.
Yeah,
But
and
you
eventually you get to this point, right, where no one wants to
yeah,
be left out. So, hey,
exactly.
Marcella, we can end this. I think it's clear what happened.
Right. You see how it becomes more of a bigger gathering when people feel more comfortable. They're like,
Yeah,
oh, I'm not the oddball out. I'm not the only one doing it. Everybody is doing it. So I want to be a part of it too. You can use that natural ability for people to want to fit in. They want to be included. They want to be a part of it. You can use that to your advantage when you're trying to create a change movement.
yeah, big time. And although the first guy getting up and, Jeffrey Moore Crossing the Chasm has a whole sequence of things that happen. It's a marketing book on product and product adoption, but it is the whole human psychology of change. You have an innovator who's the first guy who gets out there and, he's taking a big risk ultimately. And then the most important person is really the second guy that comes in because he's starting to create this early majority. And a few other people join in, and then you get to the late majority. And at the very end, there's this group of laggards who are like, I'm never going to do that. But when they're the only ones left out, they start to join in too. So let's talk about what this means in the workplace. You've got a change to the business. Maybe there's a big new operating system going in. Maybe just change procedures, whatever it is. Adoption isn't good. You need to find those key influencers. And the signaling is different. There's no dancing going on. So you've got to find a way for them to say, hey, this is actually really a good thing. You should start with a key influencer of some kind. Now, I put one caveat on all this. It better be good, right? I've seen companies try to roll garbage out and try to convince everybody to use it. I remember one kind of CRM system they tried to roll out. I became the CIO of that company. They were complaining no one would use it. And you dug in and found out that, it doubled the amount of time it took to do everything. It was just a piece of garbage. So you've got to make sure it is better, no doubt about it. And then you want to get that early majority, get other people up, probably on social media, promoting it. Key influencers. Do you know who your key influencers are? Well, People Productive could help you find out, but you need those key influencers and you need to use their ability to actually influence change in the organization. So you would want to choreograph this and do
Right.
it for all the right reasons.
Right. And you bring up a good point about key influencers. They're not always the people that are in the leadership titles on the org chart. A lot of times, your key influencers are just people that sit in your organization that may not have a leadership role at all, But because they lead by influence, you want to get that person on board and get some early adopters, those change advocates that can help you implement this change across the organization.
Yeah.
So you have different pockets of people all throughout the organization that are on board with the change. They agree with it, and now they can help convince others that are around them that this change is good. But you've also got to make sure that at some point you have to take the old away. You cannot leave multiple options out because people will still continue to do what's comfortable for them. They don't want to
They will.
change and do something new. So you really do have to find a point in time where you can remove the old and make it painful for people to stay in that old process. You have to make it so
Yeah.
painful that they don't resist the change anymore. They recognize I have to move, I have to do something differently because it's just too painful to stay where I am.
You've got to, really incent people to join in. Once you're over 50%, you're into the kind of the late majority now. And then the laggards are the last, 15% or whatever the number is. I forget exactly. But, they're the people who never change. And they might very well be the people who were the biggest advocates of the current system because they loved it, they promoted it. Maybe it's part of their reputation, and they may very well be detractors. So you got
Yeah,
to
it's
find out
their
who all
baby.
these people are.
Yeah, it's their baby. They don't want their baby to go away. Their baby, their favorite,
Mhm.
however you want to think about it, but they're invested in that current system and they don't want to move. They don't want to change. They don't want to have a new process. So you've really got to look into what's happening with that group and see what you can do to make them become adopters. But then, like you said, there are some that just they would never change unless they're forced to. And so then you do still have to do some things where, like I said earlier, you have to make it so that they cannot continue in the older way, but they have to conform to what's happening
Mhm.
if you really want true adoption of the change.
And this, we're in a time of change where companies are trying to become digital enterprises, are undertaking lots of change. It's important to understand the psychology of how this change works, choreograph the changes you're making, make sure you're rolling out things that are better than what you had before, especially if you're changing people's lives. They're smart enough to know that if they get on something that doesn't work really well, they're going to perform less well and they're going to fight it. So it's
Right.
very important to actually do this in a really thoughtful way, rolling out stuff that is better. Make sure whoever the change agents are in the beginning, that innovator, the early adopter, make sure they're conspicuous. It might be getting them up at a town hall meeting or an all hands meeting, whatever it may be, to talk about why they actually embrace the way things are moving. Make it conspicuous. You're not in a field where everybody can see what's happening. So this is part of the choreography without a doubt.
Right. You want people to be on board and you want them to be loud about it. You want them
Yeah.
to be your biggest cheerleaders. You want to have people that are in public spaces, in making not making a scene, but actually promoting the change. Because as a single change advocate, you can't really influence an entire organization so easily without the help of others. And so that's where having a good team comes into play. You want to have people on your team that are from each area in your company so that the entire team feels like they're a part of it, that they had a say in it.
Mhm.
Sometimes people don't adopt change because they feel like this change is being forced down my throat. But when they start to see, oh, each department in our company was consulted and we had a representative that could bring our concerns to the change group and maybe even influence how we rolled out the change, maybe even influence the timeline or it's something about the change, then they feel more invested when they have a say. A lot of times people just
Mhm.
want to have they want to have a say in it. They don't want to feel like they're being forced. So lean into that. Get
Mhm.
people's feedback. Ask for their opinion about what's happening. Don't just continue to try to force people into change because they'll dig in and not change. And
Yep.
then now, you're left in that situation where now the laggards are sometimes you have to force them in, but you don't want to do that up front. You really do want that to be your last resort.
Yeah, and force is saying the old one's going away. They don't really have a
Right.
choice.
Right.
That's where you gotta end up. Everybody gets that. You can't maintain 2 versions of something. It's expensive. It's a bad business move. So you do want it, and at the end of the day, you really need to make sure that, like Terry says, be transparent. If people are asking for certain things that they want done or changed, you can make those changes and be transparent about it. And then they know you're listening. And she's absolutely right. They got to know you're listening and you're working with them, because that is part of this process, right? You want them to be receptive. You want to maintain that receptivity. Part of it is being transparent, open, and honest about where you are, getting things working better, taking input, and making it happen.
Yeah. You want to gain allies in the process. You don't
Mhm.
want to create more enemies. So whatever you can do throughout the change process, whether it's, having one-on-one conversations, sometimes that's necessary with some of the influencers, your key hubs in your organization. Have some
Mhm.
one-on-one conversations and find out what's important to those groups and make some changes. Really listen to what they're saying and do something about it. You'll be surprised how
Mhm.
people will jump on board with whatever you're doing and help you along the way with things that you may not have even thought of, or things that may have been a little bit complicated for you to accomplish alone. They'll jump in and help you when they feel like
Mhm.
they're being considered, their voice is being heard. So make sure you're doing that. Don't just let people feel like they're left out and they just have to get on board, because they really don't.
No. So that's the change process. We're at 17 minutes and change. So we're a little over. We like to run 15-minute sessions here so that you can get some quick information every week, learn the human factors. This is a very important video. The psychology of change matters.
Yeah.
Hope you enjoyed it. Please join us every week, Wednesdays, 3 o'clock. We are live. We want your comments and feedback, and we very much want you here interacting with us. If you come in, put comments later, we notice comments are coming in after the fact. That's fine. We'll respond to them. We'll monitor what's happening and get back to you. But
Yes.
Tara, any closing comments?
So the key takeaways, Marcelo, can you bring up those for
Oh,
us?
yes. God, I forget to bring up the key takeaways. I did this 2 weeks in a
Yeah.
row.
So the first one is, don't be afraid to start alone. Be courageous. So you may be the only person that's out there dancing alone in the middle of a crowd, but that's okay. Like, lean into that and fully own it, because you won't be the only person for long. Somebody will join you, even if they join you out of pity because they feel sorry for you.
It's the
Or
hardest spot to fill. That's the hardest role to fill. Very important to get that first person to come forward.
yes, absolutely. So don't be afraid. Start no matter what. And then remember, if you don't take that first step, change will never happen. So there's never going to be a perfect time where all the perfect conditions exist for change. Sometimes you just have to get out there and do it. So now it's your turn. Take that first step. There's something that you need to change, whether it's in your personal life, your professional life. Just take a first step and do it.
So please join us every Wednesday on LinkedIn Live, 3 o'clock Eastern. We love having people here. It's at 3 o'clock, so the West Coast can join us. We really want your input, feedback. Feel free to comment even after the fact. We'll get back to you. And we thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.
Yep. Take care.
Bye bye.